All right, welcome everybody. Sorry to keep you waiting. Some technical issues here in the free shooting zone has led us to to improvise here, Ken. We're tucked away inside one of the concourse spots here where we, not where we should be, but, we're still in an okay spot, but we had to find a different place. We are unplugged here, so at some point we're going to have to switch and go back to where we are, but we appreciate you already. 76 people here. We see from your comments, everyone's waiting. Hi to everyone out there. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for waiting. We appreciate it. Coming off of I don't know, you call that a tough loss, Ken? How do you gauge what happened there tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely a slow start for the Jets. They were quite flat in that first period. I know a lot of the talk going into the game, Sean, was about the potential for a letdown going into the first game after a long road trip. We know the Jets had spent 12 of 14 on the road, and that it had been a grind at times for them. And we knew that the Leafs would be refreshed and ready, and they most certainly were. And after after all of our discussion about the matchup game, Sean, it didn't really matter what the matchup was, because the Leafs' top line of Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and Zach Hyman imposed their will on the game. So I think the Jets did a good job of responding in the second and third for sure, but at the same time it was kind of a little bit of a too little too late situation.
Let's go right here to what Chad Morrison has to say. Maurice knew the team would be tired, and he said it even after the game. He said this is a game that at the very beginning of the season he had circled on the calendar. We know it's been an issue with this team in the past. The first game when they get back from the road trip, we talked about it on the pregame. This is an interesting take. Why not throw some fresh legs in there?
Yeah, I mean, their Jets are at the point where those fresh legs haven't played in over a month. So Jansen Harkins would be the likely person to come in up front. He hasn't played since February 19th. So I think the coaching staff weighs the fact that, are you better off having someone who hasn't played a game in 6 weeks, or a guy who might have, a little less in the tank? But here's the other thing, Sean. We've talked about this a lot. If you're on the fourth line, you shouldn't be tired. You're playing 10 minutes a game, so those guys aren't tired. So
yeah.
So for me, unless you're putting Jansen Harkins in the top six, what are you going to do? Sit down one of your top six forwards? I mean, that's just not how teams operate. I mean, I understand. I mean, hey, Jansen Harkins might get a chance to be inserted into the lineup based on what we saw here today. Again, we know what we know is that we don't know, but what we do know when it comes to Blake Wheeler is that. He's got an incredibly high pain threshold. So the fact that he did sit out the final two periods, sure, it may have been for precaution, but still, I mean, for sure, it has to be a concern, don't you think, Sean? I mean, if it was serious enough to be pulled out of the game, I wouldn't surprise me if he has to miss more than a game. I mean, I know Paul Maurice showed some optimism at the end of the Zoom and said, well, he may not miss any time. Well, I would say I wouldn't be betting a lot on that. I mean, but again, we don't have the information. We won't get an update probably until Friday. So this is going to have to be a wait and see situation. But I'm expecting to see Jansen Harkins on Friday. But Jansen Harkins won't be in the top six. Andrew Kopp will be. And then Matthew Perreault, as he was today for a good chunk, will be back with Lowry and Mason Appleton on a line that has been highly effective this year.
Yeah, to your earlier point, Blake Wheeler does not miss games. I mean, he missed the very last game of the season. They gave him a game to sit out in 2018, right at the end when they'd locked up their spot in that second spot. They weren't going to get to first, so they let him take a game off there. When did you say the other time? Was 2015 they did something similar?
I thought, yeah, when they had beaten Colorado, or they lost to Colorado, but they qualified that night for a playoff spot, or maybe it was Thursday and they played Saturday. They played against the Flames, and I think
that last game against the Flames, exactly.
That Saturday night game. So,
and I think the other number that you had,
six games in 10 years.
There you go.
6 games in 10 seasons. So he doesn't miss time.
No, he doesn't miss time. And we had a little bit of a conversation before we went on here about, I mean, do you think someone told him, hey, maybe you should have a seat? And I think our takeaway from that is, I don't think anyone tells Blake Wheeler to have a seat. I think Blake Wheeler is the only one who tells himself to have a seat. I think we've seen enough from what he went through earlier this year, where you very astutely pointed out earlier that you felt that he was playing with an injury, that Blake Wheeler is going to play through pretty much anything unless he does not feel like he can play play. So, I mean, I don't think either of us think it's a situation where someone told him to have a seat, someone told him, to wait it out. If he couldn't go, it means it's because he could not go. That's, I think, the take both of us take away from this. So, I mean, potential to be concerned, and I find it interesting because when you're on Twitter, there's always a section of the Twitter Jets audience that wants to see what's happening with Blake Wheeler out there. I mean, I thought someone said, hopefully, in my Twitter timeline when I said that Wheeler was gone, someone said, hopefully he's traded, right? Well, I mean, careful what you wish for, because we're going to get a look at what this team looks like potentially without Blake Wheeler in it, and it's interesting. Like, didn't you feel it was weird to look and see that team out there today without Blake Wheeler out there? Like, I if you would have told me, it would have been strange. I guess I would have thought about it. But as soon as we started looking and seeing that he wasn't coming out on the ice and he wasn't on the bench, it's weird. Like, this is all we've ever known of the Winnipeg Jets. Is Blake Wheeler is with the Winnipeg Jets. He's a main player with the Winnipeg Jets. He's the captain of the Winnipeg Jets. And now all of a sudden he's not there. It felt like there was a big, giant, gaping hole on that bench tonight from the second period on.
For sure, Sean. I mean, the other thing too, I mean, in a period where the Jets had almost no scoring chances, that Dubois-Wheeler combination generated that one nice one-timer in the slot. So, I mean, after that, they didn't really get a lot going. And like you said, I mean, Wheeler did come out for that power play, but the Jets were a little bit flat on that power play as well. So, I mean, they did generate a couple shots late, but I mean, we knew the Leafs would have better jump, and their top line was just exceptional. Again, we've said this numerous times in this series. There's tons of talk around Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman is going to be getting himself a raise, and if he wants to stay with the Leafs, he's going to have to probably take less than he would get on the open market. But this is a scenario where his value to the Leafs is incredibly high because of his ability to play on a top line, but also go onto a checking line when you need him to do that. He's been excellent in terms of penalty kill, very effective. He got absolutely wallpapered by Adam Lowry behind the net.
Right.
Got right back up and didn't even miss a beat. When it comes to Wheeler, I mean, they miss his leadership. They miss, I mean, again, that talkative element that we've talked about all year long. I mean, there's always engagement, especially when there's new line combos. Wheeler and Stastny, you always see them talking with their centerman, with Shifley. And again, I mean, the players don't know where things are at where things are at either. But in terms of what Wheeler, if he's going to miss time or not. But it's just sort of, everything is kind of in wait and see mode. But I mean, there's the other thing Dom mentions here. The Jets did miss Wheeler on the power play. The Jets are in quite a good position though, having someone like Paul Stastny. He's played that down low role before on either side, whether he was in Vegas or here. He ran that down low slot from the other side, the right wing wall, when he was here in 2018. So, and he also was not afraid to get net front. So, I mean, actually, that power play did score. It seemed a little bit disjointed at times early. A little bit of bad luck on the shorthanded goal by Kerfoot. I mean, Morrissey does his best to keep it in, and then the Jets just didn't have their spacing in terms of, kind of backfilling their coverage on that. Great shot by Kerfoot, but hey, again, no 5-on-5 goals. I mean, Jack Campbell was solid, but he certainly wasn't overworked early, and that's not a huge surprise. But I mean, the fact they were able to generate a bit later on in the game, but again, the Jets are right back in that familiar scenario, Sean, where they're going to be asked to try to rebound. I mean, that's how things go. I mean, they've done it a lot, but now you're asked to rebound against the top team in the North Division, a team that just built a 3-point cushion with the game in hand. So, I mean, if you're the Jets, there's always urgency after a loss, but a little bit more so because you don't want to give the Leafs an opportunity to kind of run away, Sean, right? You don't want to give them an opportunity to go 5 up with a game in hand, even though there's still 4 games left, there's still 5 games left in the season.
5
series.
games
so,
again.
There's lots of time to get this sorted out between these two teams, and Edmonton's over here saying, don't forget about us. And even Montreal, I mean, the way they played last night, sure, they've got a bunch of games to make up, but they're feeling pretty confident. They think that with all these games the Jets have, against the Leafs and Oilers, maybe they can slip in the back door and see what happens.
Well, and to your point about them being back in the old bounce back territory. I mean, but having to do it against a team like the Leafs, get used to it, because they've got a whole bunch of games down the stretch here against the Leafs and Montreal Canadiens. These are the two teams that they're going to need to grind it out, and some more against the Oilers, correct? That season series
against the Oilers. Yep.
So I mean,
3 against Montreal also. I mean, Montreal's sitting there thinking, hey, they can catch the Jets. That's what they're feeling.
Exactly. So we're talking about 11 games of what's remaining against those top 3 teams. I mean, these are the teams. There's going to be losses against these teams, and there's going to be a need to bounce back against these teams. So, I mean, it starts tomorrow. That's where you've got to get at it. I guess it's tougher if you are missing your heartbeat, the way the guys were calling it tonight. I wanted to go back to that point you made. I want to explore that power play without Wheeler for a little bit, because the goal does get scored because Stastny has just an absolutely gorgeous screen on that play. Josh Morrissey shoots, Jack Campbell never sees it, and that's what it looked like it was going to take to get it past Jack Campbell here tonight. So I like that element, and I like that they ended up going into a spot where they felt they had strength. But if you think that it's easy what Blake Wheeler does down on that low post side, how he and Mark Scheifele play catch back and forth and seem to just crack open those defenses wide open on the power play, it's not easy. And he's got this ability to deceive and to make players think he's going in a certain direction and get them move like that. And that's one thing I thought, Ken, and I don't know, you and I didn't talk about this, but I don't think that Paul Stastny, I don't think he has that ability. I don't think he's got the kind of misdirection that Blake Wheeler has. And so moving that puck down low to him, it seemed to me that they abandoned that fairly early and essentially just stuck Stastny right in front of the goaltender. And the only option they were going to go with to get him that puck down low was to get it and jam it right away or go up top. I think that if Blake Wheeler's out for a little bit, I think that top power play is going to look a lot different without him there. Even if they have guys set up in the same spots, I think the way we usually see it move, with the places we see the puck go, I think it's going to change pretty significantly if he manages to be out of the lineup for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Sean, I think Stastny he's a very good distributor. He's got great vision. I mean, he doesn't have the same chemistry with Scheifele in terms of getting those options open, but I mean, I think that he can handle the job no problem, even though, again, it's a different place on the ice. I don't think you're going to see a massive overhaul to the structure. I think the Jets are comfortable here. One thing we may see, and it's something that we saw at the end of a morning skate a few weeks ago, where Dubois was taking those shots from those slot area. I mean, maybe you see a flip-flop with Dubois and Kopp on that first unit. Kopp obviously went into Stastny's spot today. I think the Jets are comfortable having the puck in Mark Scheifele's hands on the wall a little bit more. We know Stastny can do the screen. I think Josh Morrissey was unloading quite a few shots from the top. I think, Sean, it was just more a matter of what the Leafs were giving them, that they kind of got away from more of the down-low action, the playing catch between Scheifele and Wheeler that we're used to seeing. I think they kind of just found another opening on the ice, and it was more of an adjustment rather than an abandonment for me. But, again, it's worth witnessing when a team has the top 5 power play, because both units are going. Of course you're going to watch when the guy who leads the team in power play points may not be in the mix. And getting back to Ty and LeBrokery's point, Ty, I think actually the Jets have done a pretty good job in terms of screens during the year. Wheeler's done a good job with that, and on the second unit, Matthew Perreault's been living with his toes on the top of the crease quite significantly for a good chunk of time, and it's helped on guys like Neil Pionk's shots and Ehlers from that other side of the board. So, I mean, again, you're always, when a goalie's playing as well as Jack Campbell, you're always going to have to try and take his eyes away. But I think for me, the Jets had too many, shots from distance. That, again, of course, if you're getting shots from the outside, you definitely need to do a better job of getting traffic in front, for sure.
You touched on Jack Campbell. I think as journalists, every once in a while, we'll get a little look at a guy that some other guys don't, and it kind of changes the way that we think about those. Sorry, you want to get on something here?
Sorry, this I have. Sorry, Bobby Hull. Sorry, the play on the blue line, I'm with in real time. It looked like that's a play that Dubois has to make and get it out. But go back and watch the replay. Derek Forbert's stick kind of gets in the way right as he was trying to get the puck out. So, again, an old line mate of mine, Curtis Harms from the Pembina Valley Hawks, he said on a tweet attached when I said he was unable to get the puck out, he said, Well, Dubois wasn't expecting Forbert to poke check it off of his stick. So again, Mitch Marner does a nice job of keeping it in, but it was just one of those shifts where things just didn't go their way. I do agree that Dubois has to get the puck out. Of course he does, but he also, there was an impediment to the play itself as well. That was a factor. And then again, wrapping things up was Dubois trying to get his way back, and they lock knee on knee with Forbert. And then there again, Jets fans gasping for air, because Forbert's been one of the steadiest defensemen on the Jets this year, and all of a sudden he misses a few shifts.
If you've been paying attention to us here, we love the chirps, and I actually kind of like the bravery of Terry M, who's coming in here and trying to troll everybody and getting everyone wound up. I know everyone's saying he's found the wrong chat room, and maybe that's the case, but here we go. Hey, Terry, did you get kicked out of the Leafs chat room? I gotta say, I'm loving it. I love the chirp angle when things come in here. We were taking some heat, Kenny. They were saying that we were looking for our headbands or trying to find headbands before we got on air here. I love the chirps. People
are paying attention. Hey, people are paying attention. We love having you. Great. Thanks for your patience. This has been great.
It's great. So Terry, hey, get in there. Get in with the elbows up. Everyone's welcome here. I love it. As long as everyone's respectful. We love having that happen in here. You know what?
Here's another classic right here. Another classic. From Blake at the Lake.
But they know that. See, they're doing the pretend poke the bear thing now. They're poking you and then saying, "Okay, I'm just kidding," because you've shown your claws enough, Ken. You've shown off the claws, and people are afraid of the claws, so they don't want to mess around with it. Paul Maurice had said earlier in the year they very much know what the Leafs game is going to look like. They try to get inside, they try and get in front of the net, they find those slot shots, they're able to make those in tight passes. Looked like in the first period they were accomplishing that. They definitely accomplished that on the first two goals. What were you seeing from the Jets that they either cleaned that up, or do you think maybe here's what I can't figure out. I can't figure out whether or not the Leafs came out and kind of showed what they were able to show for good chunks of those first two games against the Jets, where the Jets did pull out 3 of 4 points, but the Leafs looked fairly dominant. I can't figure out if they were able to kind of flash that when they want, and whether the Jets turned the game around or the Leafs did what we've seen them do in the last little bit. They seem to be blowing leads, and I don't know if they're sitting on leads. I wanted to get a hold of Luke Fox, who may jump on the post game on Friday, and see what he's seeing from the Leafs. I haven't seen enough of them, but do you think that the Jets, true to form, fought their way back into this game, or do you think the Leafs kind of were a team that showed they knew what to do to stay ahead tonight? And even though it looked like the Jets were making a push, I don't think I ever saw any panic out of the Leafs team.
No doubt. I mean, again, we talk about this often, Sean. It's like when Jets fans are wondering, well, what happened when the other teams push back. I mean, when you play a good team, the other team generally pushes back. So that's what happened tonight. I mean, the Jets pushed back after a very ineffective and flat period. I mean, they cranked it up for sure. But again, I don't think that they necessarily sat back per se, but I don't think they sat on their heels. But again, they didn't have to push the pace as much. And again, the Jets also, didn't want to get blown out in this game. They wanted to, show that they could kind of run with the Leafs and try to get back into the game. I mean, they did get the one power play goal, but that was a big missed opportunity, Sean. On that format, yes, they did score, but they only came out even. I mean, yes, they scored, but they gave up a shorty. So, and you said
just their second shorty of the year, right?
Yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. So it's sure they bounced back by scoring on the power play. That's all you can try to do after giving one up. But they had a real opportunity in a game where they were soundly outplayed. They had a chance to get it to 2-1, and instead it became 3-0 after a shorthanded goal. So, but again, the Jets have done a good job. They haven't given up much in terms of shorthanded opportunities. But again, they had another gear to find, and they just didn't really find it today. I mean, I think that's it.
When you take a look at Mark Scheifele, he was really skating tonight. I mean, there was definitely some leaning on Scheifele when Wheeler was gone and juggling the lines. And I think for a while it was like he just seemed to be showing up on every line. He had a shift with the fourth line that looked really good, that he got a really nice pass over to Trevor Lewis that Trevor Lewis wasn't able to capitalize on. What did you see from him tonight? I mean, when your captain goes down, that's when you want your ace to step up. Josh Morrissey had a goal. I know that he did I mean, he's the guy who turned over that puck that led to the third goal and the shorthanded goal. But I liked his response. They put him in
a bad position. I mean,
They put him in a terrible.
I don't think
position,
that was Morrissey. I wouldn't. I mean, I know people are saying every time the goal is scored and Morrissey's on the ice, people are saying, "Oh, Josh is on the ice," and he did everything that he could to keep it in. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. And I know you weren't blaming him. He was the last person to touch it.
Well, I guess I was gonna say.
No, go back to that. Sorry, go back to Ty.
Yeah, I was gonna say it. Okay, we will. I was gonna say it like this. He was put in a bad spot. He turned that puck over, and I think a lot of times in those situations, as a hockey player, you're the last guy to touch the puck. You got put in a bad spot, but you still feel somewhat responsible. I loved his response. He comes out and he gets a goal right away after that. And if you noticed, after he scored, he turned to the bench, paused, and then gave like a real kind of fist pump motion there. Like he was stoked. So I guess the takeaway that I get from this is Wheeler falls down. We don't know how long he's going to be gone from this point on, but Mark, I thought, came out and was motoring that entire game, generated a lot. There was that setup that he had to Kyle Connor that looked like it was going to be a tap in that, Kyle just didn't get his stick quite on it. But it was
pretty crispy, but I mean, that's
very
a backdoor
crispy.
Tap in. I mean,
but
has the type of hands that generally, I bet, let's just say 8 out of 10 times, it probably might be 9 out of 10 that he buries it.
Yeah, but the point being, I thought the A's stepped up tonight in replacements once the captain went down.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, we talked about, when you brought it up to me on numerous occasions, Mark has gone into the year saying he wants to be measured against Austin Matthews and the best players in the NHL, Mitch Marner, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. So it's not a surprise to me that he stepped up his game, especially after Wheeler went down. I mean, he was feeling it last game, 2 goals and an assist, feeling at the top of his game. So I'm not surprised at all. And as you mentioned, he was flying on a lot of occasions tonight. I mean, again, the Jets, I think the Leafs, and we've talked about this upstairs, Sean, in the press box, the Leafs were excellent at small area plays. Their defensive zone.
Man.
All we've heard about is, the Leafs won't be able to do it when it matters. They won't be able to get it done. They're not strong enough defensively. Well, they had a lot of, and we said also, one area of their game that they've improved exponentially at is their back pressure. They didn't really even have to lean on that very much today because the Jets didn't quite have that same energy. But in terms of their spacing in the defensive zone and their ability to make small area plays to have a clean exit, it was absolutely on display throughout the contest. So
I was going to say, what do the Jets got to do to slow that down? Because I thought there was a couple times I thought Zach Bogosian seemed to be the weakest link on that Leafs blue line, that the Jets were able to get him caught up in that corner. But even at that point, it's like they needed to overload him, and then he would just fire it back around the other net to his behind the net to his defenseman who was waiting there. I mean, to me, I think they need to drop a different strategy on the forecheck in order to slow them down, because it seemed like they were able to get out of the zone fairly easy tonight on most occasions.
Yeah, for me, again, that just kind of goes back to the energy levels. I mean, the Leafs obviously...
You think it was execution ahead of
plan? Again, I don't know that it's... I mean, you're playing the team for the 5th time, so I think that you kind of have an idea. You're not going to overhaul your forecheck. I think it's just a matter of where you get the pucks in and where you can attack to try to create that chaos and turnovers.
Okay.
But again, they're going to have to be better at it for sure. And again, we talked about it in the morning with guys like Dylan DeMello. That was the template. They know what the template is. They've executed the template in those games. In that one game specifically on the Saturday night when Brissois played, they just weren't able to clamp it down today. So, I mean, we'll see. Again, let's see what it brings on Friday. But let's go back to that Ty's comment.
Yeah, let's go to it now.
I'm pretty sure.
This is, so
Ty, first of all, tell me if this is the Ty that I know. I think I played baseball against him. He was with the Elmwood Giants, first baseman, smart guy. For me, Ty, you played sports. I don't think you need a manager to motivate you. For me, I don't buy. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from. This has nothing to do with preparation. I mean, players are doing their best to get. It's not the coach's job for you to have energy. The coach actually can't impact your energy level. For me, the players have to be ready.
Well, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, he's been doing it all year with the way he's balanced lines and he's elevated the 4th line.
Sorry. What I'm saying is that I don't. Was it coaching that there was a turnover? Your plan is not to turn the puck over at the blue line on the first goal, and your plan was not for Hyman to beat, fall on the guy's leg. He gets pushed in by Poolman and gets to the puck first. I mean, those two things have nothing to do with strategy. That's execution. I totally understand. Could they have had a better defensive plan in the first period? Maybe, but it just was a matter that the Jets didn't have their legs and the Leafs did, and they just took it to them, and sometimes that happens. I mean, I understand people want the games to be played crisply and perfectly every time, but this is the thing. 12 out of 14 games on the road. It's a taxing scenario, so I'm not surprised. I'm not taking them off the hook completely, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that this is as easily as saying, oh, the game plan didn't work. The Jets had a game plan. They thought that Dubois would go head-to-head with Matthews. Well, they gave up a goal in the second shift or so, and they abandoned the plan because it wasn't working. So there was coaching happening. And when Lowry's line went against Matthews, Sean, that's when that line was far less effective. So, I mean, you can draw up a perfect plan, but if you don't have all your guys going, and then you don't have all your guys when Wheeler leaves, it's difficult. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm not saying, again, a coach can always try to have an impact, but I just don't buy the argument. To me, it's just an easy argument, saying, oh, the coach didn't have them prepared. I don't buy that for 1 second. If the coach says when the schedule comes out, he knows this is a game that he's concerned about, he's going to have a plan, but sometimes the plan doesn't work. And the other team had a lot to do with the plan, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So before the game, we do our little guesses on who's going to win. You picked the Jets to win 4-2. I think I was 3-2 for the Leafs, and I did it based on Andrew Kopp saying this morning that the guys were moving around the dressing room and they were pretty sluggish, right? And he said he thought they got them going, but we've seen enough from this team, and Paul Maurice has talked about it openly that this team struggles in that first game back from the road trip. And I mean, I wonder about that. I used to think about Paul Maurice that there was a lot of times that there were clear and obvious issues with this team that he just refused to acknowledge. You'd ask him about it in the press briefings afterwards, and he just simply refused to acknowledge it because I think it's his old idea. He doesn't like introducing a negative. I think the fact this year, and maybe maybe you can take something with this, but I think the fact this year that he's able to talk about these kind of things and acknowledge that there's a problem, like acknowledge we struggle against the Montreal Canadiens' speed and say it out loud. We have a hard time with the first game back when we come off the road. The fact that he says that stuff out loud, I think shows a level of confidence that he hasn't had in his team in the past, that he can acknowledge the reality of the situation. And I think what it does is it puts them in a spot where we look and we say, well, he said they were going to lose, that they have a tough time, that they're not going to have energy. They didn't have energy. That's the coach's fault. I think it's more an acknowledgement that he's able to acknowledge the situation and doesn't think his team is so fragile that he can say, guys, it's going to be a tough one because we all got back off the road, and Wheels, you've got time to spend with your family, and Paul Stastny, you've got time to spend with your family, and Dylan DeMello, your wife's been at home with a new baby, and you walk in the door and she's probably going to grab it and say, here you go, your turn. And then you got to be a dad for a little while and, do all the stuff that's involved with that. Like, these kind of things are hard. Everyone knows what it's like to get, even for the young guys, like there's probably laundry to do. You get off the road and it's not like just flopping down on the couch for most of these guys. A lot of them have work that they need to do. And I guess just to get back to the original point, I think Paul Maurice talks to his team the way that very successful teams that you and I have covered down the stretch in the playoffs in years past. I don't know if we've ever had this conversation, but I used to say to people, Joel Quenneville isn't afraid to acknowledge his team's weaknesses out loud. And it used to seem like Paul Maurice used to do that. I think we're seeing Paul Maurice getting into a position where he's not afraid to talk out loud about some of the things that cause this team problems. And what it does is it sets him up to fail in situations like this because people, exactly like we're hearing, are saying, you knew they were going to be flat. Why didn't you do something?
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, I just as a friendly reminder, this is not a Jets problem. Almost every team in the NHL after a long road trip, this is something that happens frequently around the league. So coaches are, if there was an easy solution, all coaches would have figured it out. You know what the best solution is? It's the goalie making 45 saves most nights. That's the best solution to the flatness coming off of a long road trip. Again, it's a compressed schedule. the Jets can't afford many consecutive losses. Well, guess what? They went the second longest among 31 teams without losing consecutive games in regulation. So, of course, there's things to clean up all the time. The Jets are going to need to be better on Friday. And if they're not better, well, then we will be having another strong debate on a Friday night. So, I mean, that's the beauty of hockey. I mean, there's always things that you want to see. So let's see what we see. I mean, so far the Jets have done. Again, I've said this before. If Sean or I had said to any person in Manitoba or a Jets fan around the world that at game 37 the Jets would be 3 points out of first place, who wouldn't have taken that? If you're a Jets fan, I honestly, if people in the chat, who would not have taken that? Tell me, raise your hand if you don't think that's the truth. If you were the person that said, you know what, the Jets should run away with the North, raise your hand, because I didn't hear a lot of those people going into the season, Sean.
Yeah.
Did you?
No,
I didn't.
No, like I've said this before. A lot of people were telling me. Yeah, a lot of people were telling me that they didn't think that the Jets were going to make the playoffs. To be honest, when we were doing our preseason insider picks for who was going to make it in the North, again, I'll go. I had Edmonton finishing first, Toronto finishing second, Calgary finishing third, and the Jets finishing fourth. And I remember feeling the way that everyone else was picking, that I was going out on a limb to pick the Jets to finish in the playoffs. And I remember thinking fairly solidly, I thought that they would be in. But there was a lot of people who did not expect them to be here. And I totally get that. I understand it, because they came into the season basically with the same issues and problems that they had the previous season. We're still looking at a team trying to replace a defense core that got absolutely ravaged and hasn't really been put back together yet. And I think you and I have acknowledged that we still feel there's a ways to go on that with our expectation that they're going to go and swing big to try and bring someone in on the back end. But you're entirely right. We're at a stage where people are saying, how come they're not doing this, and how come they're not doing that on a night like this, and how come they're talking about not having the energy, and sure enough they come out with the energy. The conversation a couple months back was, this team doesn't have a damn chance. Now they had a chance tonight, where if they won this game outright, they were in first place in the division. And I mean, listen, we can yours and my job should be to point out when the Jets are failing, the things that we think that they should be doing, and we should do that. We should most definitely do that. I think, and we do that, but we also, by the same token, need to be giving credit where credit's due with the Winnipeg Jets. And again, they put themselves in a great position here tonight. We knew it was going to be a tough game for them, and let's not throw at the fact that this Toronto Maple Leafs team is very good and does what they do very good, and has had a very good goaltender who's yet to lose so far this year, who came in motivated. I mean, I wanted to talk about that. Jack Campbell is a friend of Connor Hellebuck's, and he wants a piece of Connor Hellebuck. Every time he plays them, you go back to and remember last season when they were playing, when he was with the LA Kings. The LA Kings stole a game. Jack Campbell stole a game from the Winnipeg Jets on that LA Kings team. That was terrible. And after the game, I interviewed him on Hockey Night in Canada, and before we got on, he'd said that Bucky and I are really good friends. They'd met at the World Championships. They really got along. He admires them like crazy, but he wants a piece of them every single time he plays them, and he got that piece tonight. I thought he looked very calm, very composed. I'm not going to say he outdueled Hellebuck, because I thought Hellebuck did a fine job, but he held his own against a guy who is, a Vezina caliber trophy winner, when he's a guy who's like fighting for relevance in the NHL. Sure. No, again, this is Campbell is where Hellebuck was when he had to, take over the job or steal the job, right? I mean, this is what's happening. In the Mason year, yeah. Sorry. Right. I mean, again, this is, or even the year before when when they sent Andre Pavlik, then they waived him and sent him to the Moose. I mean, but the difference here is that he had to actually beat out Freddie Anderson, who's been a number one goalie for a long time, right? This is the beautiful part about hockey. The Leafs have been in first place pretty much the entire season. Mm-hmm. They are not sure about what's going on with their number one goalie, who had an appointment back in Toronto now.
But what's happened? Well, Jack Campbell got an opportunity, just like Connor Hellebuyck did when Andrei Pavlik was hurt, and he's played great. I mean, you got to give the guy credit, but at the same time, the thing about the Leafs is that they're going to have to get it done when it matters most. This core group is being challenged to win when it counts. The Leafs have not won a playoff series since 2004. So, I mean, the Jets have only won 3 rounds since they've been back. There's pressure on the Jets as well. No doubt about that. But, I mean, Jack Campbell, you have to give the guy credit. He's a first-round draft pick. Things didn't go well for him at the start of his career. Changed organizations twice. And now he looks like a guy who a lot of nights is looking like he's a legitimate number 1 guy. But again, he's going to have to prove it in the playoffs now as well, which, again, beauty of hockey. The regular season is important. Paul Maurice said it this morning. Right now, you're learning about the team that you coach. You're learning about, this is how Pierre-Luc Dubois looks with Nikolai Ehlers and Kyle Connor. I know what Mark Scheifele looks like with Kyle Connor, but I don't know what Mark Scheifele looks like with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers. So you test a few things out. Today in the first period, the Jets tested something out. It didn't work out for them, but they survived the loss of Derek Forbort for a few shifts. You know, Mitch Marner makes a ridiculous backdoor pass. No doubt about that. That was just exceptional patience in front. And again, I've been, pumping the tires of Zach Hyman. Mitch Marner was exceptional tonight. Both ends of the ice. Absolutely
his stick is
fantastic effort. Great on the penalty kill. Great on the power play. Great at 5-on-5. This guy is an exceptional talent. Again, the big line stepped up. And as we mentioned, I thought Mark Scheifele was really sharp. He was skating well. It didn't translate into points, but I think that's a game that Mark Scheifele can build on. But the Jets just weren't able to generate enough offense. And now let's see if it's just a matter of not being sharp enough or having enough energy. So let's see what happens on Friday night if they can bring that energy the way that they did at the end of that road trip.
North End Rick is asking me why I'm not wearing the mankini on my face. So the joke here is he thinks that my face covering looks like a Speedo. So before the game, we were in an area where we have to wear masks. There's a broadcast area here. Basically, we touched on this the last time we were here, but there's a broadcast area near where, if you were watching the game tonight, Scott Oak was doing his thing. It's where Sarah Orleski does her thing when TSN has the games. So there's an area where you're allowed to take the mask off as long as you socially distance. And Ken and I are 20 meters apart or something like that. So we come to this area and we're allowed to take the mask off. But I'm loving the mankini. I'm always, you know what? I'm taking so much guff for the headband that I'm thinking I may try and pivot and say, yeah, it is. It's like I cut up a Speedo so I can get a little heat off the headband. Although, to be honest, I love the headband. I want to get the idea of getting the Kenny and Renny symbol in the middle of the headband. Someone got me thinking on that, and I want that. I want it bad. Hey, I wanted to get back because you touched on this about the number of rounds that the Jets have won since they got back. It's going to be a really interesting year in that, Sheldon Keefe and Dave Tippett and Pomo, one of those guys is going to be gone. Sorry, I don't mean gone. I don't mean gone from their job. One of those guys is going to be gone in the first round of the playoffs, and whichever it is going to have a massively disappointed fan base and will have to face the questions of why they're not able to, because they're all in the same boat. Sheldon Keefe can't get the Toronto Maple Leafs past the first round.
Well, same deal with Dave. Had a chance though. Keefe is still pretty new on the job.
Sure. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. But he continued a problem that had existed with that team and probably had the best draw and best opportunity that team has had to get to the next round. Agree?
Well, I guess, sure. But I mean, Columbus wouldn't have agreed. But this is what we talked about before the game.
Well, it's not the Boston Bruins, right? Before that, it was like the Leafs are losing to the eventual Stanley Cup winner in the first round. That was the excuse. They're a really good team. There was no arguing that the Columbus Blue Jackets were the second or third best team in the playoffs last year, and that's who the Leafs lost to, right? So, I mean, to get back to that point, I mean, it's going to be interesting when that time comes, and you and I have talked about it, and I don't think. Okay, let's put it like this. I don't think that any of those coaches lose their job if they lose in the first round. But Don't you think that it's a big domino to fall for those coaches, and that all of a sudden the spotlight gets really hot on those coaches for what happens next year?
Sure. I mean, but again, Edmonton has changed coaches quite a few times, right? I mean, Tippett's still relatively new in the program there. I mean, he took over, you know, McClellan had his chance, but they're just starting. But that's the other part. The Oilers haven't really gone on a long run either. And they've had McDavid here now and Draisaitl as being dominant players for a long time. Sean, for me, this is very simple. It just reinforces how hard it is to win. And I totally understand that the Jets fan base believes that 2018 was just the beginning and that was going to be like that for the next 10 years.
I think everyone thought that.
Right, and same as the Blue Jays, right? Blue Jays, 2015-16, had been in the playoffs for more than 20 years.
Yeah.
That, you expect that to be the next great thing for the next 10 years.
But those are two very different scenarios, right? Because you're talking about, and I mean, we can get into this, but the Blue Jays are a team that kind of loaded up old and knew that things were going to be falling. I mean, R.A. Dickey's there, for God's sakes. Like, that guy, you know, is at the end of his career. The Jets looked like they were just taking that step forward. So I think that there's more frustration there with the Jets, because if you're a Blue Jays fan or a similar team that's loads up to take a run, I mean, we go back to Ottawa. Ottawa lost in Game 7 overtime against the Pittsburgh Penguins that year. They're close to going in. The Penguins win it all. But you knew that was basically the swan song for Ottawa, because they were the oldest team in the league at the time. That's the frustration in Winnipeg, is the fact that they looked like they had just taken their first step, and they haven't taken a step since. And they've only got older and more mature with a young lineup. Sorry to interject.
No, you're bang on. I mean, but the other part that we can't ignore is that the Jets were actually playing well late last year when the pause happened, and then they lost 2 of their top 4 scorers in the first game. So, and it's COVID. So I totally get it. I'm not expecting you to push pause, but it's you need to be very careful at making sweeping assertions about A, teams, and B, individual players. This is a season like no other. So again, you got to be careful by saying, well, that guy's got to go, that guy's got to go, that guy's got to go, that guy's got to go. That's very interesting. I mean, I don't think that Keefe is fired. He just took over from Babcock. I mean, it's been a little while now, but it's not that long. He's just getting settled in. Keefe's just getting settled in. He's finally got his players to buy in to the importance of playing without the puck and defensively. I don't think Sheldon Keefe is in hot water at all, nor should he be. And
or Dubas, as he was saying.
Well, to Billy's point, I think just one thing. The reason why Dubas could face a little bit of a different standard is because of the way the roster is composed. I think it's more likely that Kyle gets a chance to trade one of those core forwards before he's fired, but we also know that patience in Toronto would not be at a high level because of the lack of playoff success. So
that's something they have. That's something they have in spades in Winnipeg, and we've seen throughout this organization, is patience. But shouldn't we be able to draw the same parallels? I mean, if a guy like Kyle Dubas would be in trouble, when you see the roster, it's clear and evident to see the roster that they've put together and the talent that it has, and that when that team has had holes in its lineup, he's been able to go out and find a way to patch those holes and bring in really good players. The Jake Muzzin thing I thought was phenomenal, the way he was able to bring him in. But I mean, it's the same thing in Winnipeg. I mean, if you take a look at what Kevin Cheveldayoff has done, it's impressive. It's impressive. The guys that he's got under contract. You take a look at the contract he's got Nick Ehlers to, the contract that he's got Mark Scheifele to, the contract that he gets Kyle Connor to. Connor Helba, go on and on and on. The guys that he's got at a decent price and the way he's been able to round out this roster. But I guess if we're going down this road and talking about this and the potential for a guy like Kyle Dubas to be gone, or if we're talking about the coaches, if it happens in Winnipeg and the first round happens, at what stage do we start asking the question, who's at fault here? Is Paul Maurice not getting enough out of a winning roster? Or is the chemistry of this roster not what it should be, or the tiny holes that need to be plugged not getting plugged? And when should we be looking at holding to account either of those two men for that job not getting done. And again, I hate going down this road because they haven't lost, and who knows, they could go on a run and it's all for nothing if they go and they win in that first round. But I mean, that's the thing that people keep asking, and that's the thing that everyone keeps going at Paul Maurice for, is that yes, they're near the top of the division. They could have been in first place tonight, but there's people sitting there thinking this lineup should be better. This lineup should be better, and it's not because of the execution of the coach. So I guess, when do we start having those? When do those conversations catch up to people in this market the way they do in other markets, like you're touching on in Toronto?
Well, I mean, like you just said, Sean, I mean, if you have a bunch of $10 million players, or you're constantly trading players out the door, I mean, then you can blame the GM. But if the composition of the roster is such that they're able to be competitive, again, there's been a big chain of events that have happened. And again, I understand fans, they point to 2019 and in the everything that's happened in the second half. Well, guess what happened in the second half? Dustin Byfuglien was hurt and missed almost the entire second half. Josh Morrissey missed the last 20 games. Since that time, fans point to things turning downhill completely. Well, things did disintegrate to a degree, but show me a team that can lose two of their top defensemen and go on an extended playoff run. And then Dustin Byfuglien, who's been one of the most impactful players in the 10 years here, decides to not play in a year where the Jets were already turning over half of their defense core. If you want to blame the GM for that, well, or the coach, I mean, on what basis? You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand. So the GM, well, he traded Trouba and didn't get enough, but as it turns out, the players they got are enough. And that's without Ville Heinola even yet to become an NHL regular. So,
right.
I mean, I understand there's lots of people that send me notes about Paul Maurice. His winning percentage in Winnipeg is actually quite high. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect that the Jets should be rolling at a 750 clip. Oh, but he leads in career losses. That's a fact, but that's a longevity issue. That's not, to me. Look at the personnel he had in a lot of those scenarios. I mean, to me, that's not the case. I mean, you could make the argument, and some people did, even Paul himself. He thinks one of the best jobs that he did last year was when they lost Byfuglien and turned over the whole defense corps, and they had a chance to play in the play-in round. They didn't fold. They weren't in last place. Of course, Connor Hellebuck had something to do with that. He was the best goalie in the NHL last year. Like, goaltending and coaching are very closely tied. I mean, can you argue that things could be a little bit different? Sure. But I just think that it's such a cop-out until people, again, Scotty Bowman, how much different is the Jets' record if they had Scotty Bowman in these last 3 seasons would be my counter. Do the Jets have a great core? Yes. But I don't think we're putting the roster beside the Tampa Bay Lightning and saying, you know what the Jets did? They really underachieved compared to the Lightning. The Lightning had the best team in the NHL last year, and they went out and won the Stanley Cup. I mean, when a team, the Jets, when they had their probably their best personnel at the time in 2018, they made the conference final. Did they miss an opportunity against Vegas? Yes, but Vegas delivered the goods. It wasn't that the Jets were awful in the series. Marc-Andre Fleury was rocking around a .950 save percentage. That happens in the playoffs where there's a massive element of luck involved. So holding people to account and asking for more, totally fine. But I don't think that you could say, even though some of our great commenters have raised their hands and saying the Jets, they had them as the top team in the in the North.
Good for them.
Right on. But
good for
that's not the roster that I saw. I saw a roster that had incredibly high-end talent up front. They had questions about, we thought they had depth, but we didn't think they had the best depth in the division. Maybe the top, some people think the Jets' top 9 is among the best in the NHL. But I don't think there's a lot of people saying the Jets have the best defense core in the NHL. We knew that was a question mark going into the year, and we'll see how it develops in the last 19 games. But the Jets do have one of the best goalies in the league. So if you have that top-end talent and you have the goaltending, those were two things that led me to believe that they would be a playoff team. I had no idea if they'd be second or fourth or sixth. but I picked them as fourth, but I thought they had the potential to be second. And now, let's see what happens prior to the trade deadline. If the Jets can add one of those impact players, and then what impact will that player have on the equation, on the chemistry? And it just, to me, it just reinforces how hard it is to win in the NHL. That, to me, is the biggest thing. Sean, we covered the San Jose Sharks at certain periods of time.
Yeah.
The San Jose Sharks had an incredible run. They made the final once.
Yeah.
One time. They have one Western Conference banner up there, and by the time they arrived at the final, they were so beaten up by the St. Louis Blues that they had nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
That's not a knock on the Penguins. The Penguins were a great team that year in 2016 as they won again. They also had two of the best players in the NHL playing at the absolute peak level. So to compose a roster that is A, stays healthy, B, has enough goaltending, C, has enough depth, and D, has enough bounces over the course of a playoff run to win 16 games, a lot has to go right for that to happen. Brian Burke said it all the time, Sean. There's only one parade. So, I mean, there's been no parade in Winnipeg. There's also been no parade in Toronto since 1967. And there's never been a parade in Vancouver since they entered the league. Montreal Canadiens, who have won more than anybody, they haven't won since 1993. So, again, we know the Blackhawks, great run, 3 cups. Penguins, 3 cups, beautiful. It's hard to win. That doesn't mean you should not want more. You should always want more. But it's just a reminder of how hard it is to win, even when all the pieces are in place, let alone knowing that they probably need a couple pieces to get to that level.
Well, and to be those teams that repeat like that, I mean, you brought up those teams, you have to have generational talent, right? Like we're sitting here talking about Sidney Crosby as being one of the best players of all time, which he is, and he's at the heart of that. And Evgeny Malkin is a phenomenal player as well. And then you go on the other side, Patrick Kane is probably, can we put him as the best scorer of this generation? I mean, other than potentially Crosby or Ovechkin, I mean, he's right there, you know, especially when you combine goals and assists. So, I mean, it's interesting. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes the difference is you've got that good team, but they've got that element to them. I wanted to go back just a little bit to Chevy. And this is the thing that I find is fascinating about Chevy. Like, go back and find a bad move that he's made. Like, go back, you touched on it. Trouba, it looked like it was, you know, fans were totally upset with it at the time. I mean, they've won that trade. They've won it in a walk. They've won it with Pionk, never mind the fact that now you're adding Ville Heinola. And if you take a look at the moves they had to make way back to the days of Evander Kane, or even the little moves like bringing in Forbert this season, you know, and filling the specific role that you need for him with the money that they had available to them. I can't, like, when's the last time, other than, let's say, Mason, when they brought in Mason to be their goaltender, and luckily they had Connor Hellebuck step up, but when is the last time that Kevin Cheveldayoff made a move that was an absolute bust?
Well, yeah, I mean, some people would argue that for me, Kevin Hayes just didn't work out. The premise behind the move was accurate, and the Jets thought they were getting the Kevin Hayes that had played so well for the New York Rangers in the playoffs.
And has continued to do so for the Philadelphia Flyers.
That's what they thought they were getting, and for whatever reason, it just didn't, the fit wasn't there. I mean, I think that, you know, there were flashes from Hayes, no doubt about that. I think that one game against Nashville where that line with Connor and Laine lit it up for, I think, 4 goals, but whatever it is, it just didn't fit. So, yeah, I mean, same thing. I mean, people talk about the draft. Well, the Jets could have had Sam Girard. Well, Sam Girard was drafted 47th overall, and the team that drafted him traded him to the Colorado Avalanche. So, I don't want to hear the Jets should have had Girard at 18. Well, great.
Every team in the league could have had Shea Weber
on him. Exactly.
I mean, there's a number of players like that,
And then you're also ignoring the fact that the same general manager found a 5th round draft pick that has become a consistent Vezina Trophy winner. I mean, exactly, Alistair. It was a good idea that didn't, you know, yield results for the Winnipeg Jets. That doesn't mean you don't hesitate from making the deal. The Jets knew they weren't getting Paul Stastny, but they thought they could find someone that would have a similar impact and had experience.
Yeah. Coffee and TV asking if practice is canceled tomorrow. That's the case. We're waiting to see if the Leafs are going to play.
I think, yeah.
I mean, our understanding was at some point, and we should get to that, and we should touch on the whole Vancouver issue. But our understanding before this was Paul Maurice at some point had said we're not going to see practice again until April 17th or something like that. Was when he said the next practice would be. I mean, they're clearly in energy conservation mode and trying to make sure that the team gets the rest that it needs. But we should bring up Vancouver because that game canceled tonight is too early to kind of say what's happening here. We need more information. But when this happened with Montreal, I mean, this is how it started, and it ended up being some time off. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if those Jets games aren't happening this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, Sean. I mean, we don't want to go too far down the road because the fact of the matter is more information is required, as you mentioned. But it would not be a surprise because of the cluster of games that those could be fit in. I think the NHL has already added some games into that last week that was supposed to be the week that the playoffs were supposed to start, but they had built in that, kind of 1 week buffer zone. I don't think it would be a surprise if they went into that scenario as well. But I mean, let's see what the close contact situation is. Let's see if it's more than one player, and then kind of go from there and see where it leads. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Jets didn't play those games. And to be honest, I think that if you're the Jets, if you're Paul Maurice, you talked about the fact that all three of those extended breaks were early in the season. And I think the Jets would probably, even though, yes, in a couple of those situations, they came out a bit flat coming out of a break. Look at how the Leafs have looked coming out of their break. If the Jets can get a break before the final 18 games, which will be so condensed, sure, they'll miss a little bit later on in the year. But, I mean, again, here's the other part. It's not like the Jets have any say in this. I mean, the league is going to dictate, and the virus and the health of everyone is going to dictate what happens next.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to touch on this one. It's often said that the Jets have a hard time bringing in high-end UFAs. Would you say that Chevy's had to do his job with one hand tied behind his back? I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think the one thing that we've seen across the league when it comes to the whole free agency is sometimes not going and signing that free agent is the best thing that you can do. And I think that, I totally agree. I don't think it's easy for the Jets to bring free agents here. And I think it actually keeps them out of a situation that's a little bit of a gamble. I'll say this. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a really good job of utilizing the options that he does have with him. And one of the things that he's done is in his drafting and developing and putting out, what does Pierre-Luc Dubois say when you ask about moving him to a different line? What does Mark Scheifele, what does anyone say when they get moved to a different line on this team? They say, yeah, no big deal, because everywhere you go, you're playing with talent on this team. Well, that's allowed Kevin Cheveldayoff, because he's assembled a team like that, to have players like Kevin Hayes. I think Stastny did the same thing. Players who are coming from a situation and fully expect that they're going to an even better situation in Winnipeg, where they will look their best before they hit unrestricted free agency and put them in a position to sign really big contracts, which both those players did after they came to Winnipeg. Paul Stastny goes to Vegas and Kevin Hayes goes to Philadelphia. So I think that Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a good job making the Jets attractive in that way. Is this going to be a team that's attractive to unrestricted free agents? It's probably never going to be the case, but Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a good job of making sure that he doesn't need to rely on that being the case. And again, I think it's actually saved them in a lot of ways, because in Winnipeg, we don't have players that have those ridiculously bad contracts that you get bent over a barrel on because you're in stiff competition with another team. You heard about him talking with Paul Stastny. He felt like he overextended to try and keep Paul Stastny. And so there's not that situation. And because of it, I don't know that other than, I think people will take a look at Matthew Perreault's contract and think that it had been a bad contract. There's a couple here and there.
Seasons. It's
yeah, exactly. And look what he's doing here. He's he's been doing everything he could possibly be asked to do, which I admire in a player who some people don't think has a value contract. Well, he's going out and he's showing that whatever opportunity you give him, he'll maximize that opportunity and give you a return. But again, the Jets, I mean, take a look at the troubles that Edmonton had for a while with the players that they brought in and the contracts that were bogging them down. You've got to be happy if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan that there are not a ton of those contracts that hang around this team's neck and weigh them down.
Well, and that's the other thing. So are the Jets operating at a disadvantage, I think, is sort of what the original question was posted. I mean, they're not going to be the number one attractive market in terms of weather or city, but what they're trying to sell is culture, and that's probably the reason why so many of their draft picks have signed on for the long term at reasonable rates. I mean, and we also, Paul Stastny is a great example, Sean. Paul Stastny probably, before waiving the no, if he doesn't know Blake Wheeler, Paul Stastny probably doesn't waive his no trade clause, but he called someone that he knew and that he played with and that he was familiar with and that he trusted. And he ended up saying it was one of the best decisions that he made, right? So when you spread it's on, to be honest, it's similar to Jets 1.0. There were tons of players who got traded to Winnipeg and thought it was, they were being banished. But those are the people that ended up moving and living in Winnipeg or buying a place in Gimli or whatever else in cottage country. So,
right.
I mean, hey, every team could improve. Every team has challenges. The weather issue is probably not changing. We know the Jets have been on a lot of no move or modified, contracts in the past, but they're trying. Winning cures all, and building a culture is important. So those are things that the Jets are trying to do and have done in a lot of regards. But again, are the Jets going to be in the bidding? I mean, if they're in the bidding for Alex Pietrangelo, they can't offer a tax-free state, and they probably couldn't offer as much money. So then you can't win the bid. It would have to be a scenario where Pietrangelo, who probably was close with Paul Stastny in the past, would have said, hey, Winnipeg's a great place to play. Maybe you should consider them. But again, we know most people are going to go A, where the money is, and B, where they're trying to win. So, hey, people are doing the best that they can. I think that Winnipeg's done a great job in terms of bolstering its reputation and how they treat players. Once people get to the market, it's friendly Manitoba. People feel welcome here for the most part, and that that's part of the selling point. But sometimes if somebody offers you more money, that selling point only can take you so far down the garden path, if you will.
Or we could offer poutine and honey dill sauce. I love that
Amazing
idea.
Coffee and cheesy. Hang on. Sorry, I noticed videos of Reddit did not come back this time. I hope that they didn't take my tragically hip lecture too personally.
Oh no, I think it was.
Comes back.
I think it was clear you're joking. Video of Reddit. If you catch up to this later, we miss you. You offer a lot and you bring a lot of different insights and questions. We love to have you. So if you took it wrong, that's not what Kenny meant by that. We like to have a little bit of fun, and we fully expect to see you back. I'll go find videos of Reddit and I'll bring him back, and him or her back if that's what we need to do. This is interesting. I wanted to touch on this. Logan Sparky, who comes back all the time, says Logan Stanley on the power play in front of the net. It's a Joe Piscucci idea. I noticed it's come up a couple of times here. I'll say this. Back a while ago when they used to put Adam Lowry in front of the net.
Sure. Well, he's out there today on the second unit.
Right, but I didn't think it worked. Like I get the idea, and everyone loves to go back to the idea of that early Chicago team and Dustin Byfuglien in front of the net. But what people don't give Dustin Byfuglien credit for is his hands are phenomenal, and to be that guy in front of the net, you have to have you have to have really, really big hands, and you have to be powerful. And so Stanley's powerful, and maybe he's got pretty good hands, but I would argue what we saw tonight from Paul Stastny is a player who knows how to do that with smarts. I mean, the Jets score that goal because he has the perfect screen at the perfect time. Jack Campbell never sees the puck hits back in the net. And I think Blake Wheeler is doing the same thing when he's in the lineup. Again, we don't know how long he's going to be gone for. I got to say this, though. I usually agree with a lot of Joe Piscucci's ideas. I absolutely love Joe. I worked with him at Global about 12 years back. And when I got this job, Joe Piscucci was a reference on my job application, and he got a phone call, and it sounded we laughed about it later. He made a pretty compelling argument. I won't get into it, but it made me laugh the way he told them that they should be taking me. So love Joe Piscucci. I usually agree with him. On this one, I don't, just because I'm not a big believer in the idea of just taking a big body and putting him in front of the net, because you take a guy like Joe Pavelski and put him net front, and he gets as much done as any big guy has ever done. I don't necessarily think it takes a big body. I think we've fallen in love with that idea because Dustin Byfuglien did it at one point and did it to such great effect. But we found out later in life, Dustin Byfuglien is clearly not just a big body. He's a big body with skill and a ton of smarts, and that's why that worked, not just because he was big and strong.
No, I mean, Bruins use Chara there too, but that's the other part, that both Chara and Byfuglien have these big shots. And I mean, that's the one thing, I mean, I would say you get half marks for suggesting Logan Stanley on the power play, but it's maybe at the top as a shooter. This is a guy who's getting his shot through. He's got a heavy shot. But again, I'm with you, Sean. I don't think the Jets need to try Logan Stanley there. I think that if they try him, it would be on the second power play unit at some point as a shooting option because of his ability to get his shot through. But again, especially with a young player, he's just started to get comfortable in the NHL, you know, approaching 30 games. No need to throw a curveball at him. I'm sure he'd be open to it, but I don't think that's the best use of his skill set. And as you mentioned, if they want to have a net front presence, you go to Lowry, who A, is great at screening, and B, is a guy who scored 50 goals in the Western League and has pretty good hands around the net when it comes to retrievals and rebounds and things of that nature. But hey, we like the outside the box thinking, but neither Sean and I are going to give that the stamp of approval or a thumbs up. I've seen a few people talk about Montour. For me, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, could he be a guy who benefits from a change of scenery? Maybe. I think the Jets are aiming higher than Brandon Montour. Again, he was a great player at times for the Ducks, but I think they're aiming a little bit higher in that regard.
I agree with you 100%. Kenny, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go in a direction you want, because just so everyone, we love that you egg us on and want us to keep going, and Kenny loves it especially because he just wants to go and go and go. We do have security waiting for us, so it's a little different when it's home games. Do you have something you want to touch on? Other than that, I was going to say I wanted to dig in one last time on the matchups, the way that you see them playing out now. It's tricky with, you know, the uncertainty of what's happening with Blake Wheeler, but there were some things that we fully so we expected Stanley to go against, not Stanley, we expected Lowry to go against Tavares. That's how they started the game. We expected Dubois to go up against Matthews. That's how they started the game, and it looked like it didn't work very well right off the bat, and they moved away from it quickly. Do you think Lowry is going to be getting the healthy dose of Austin Matthews from now on going forward for the rest of the season?
I wouldn't say rest of the season, Sean. This is part of that experimentation, but because it worked tonight for the majority of the final two periods, I mean, I think they made the change in the first, and it was pretty effective there as well at times. I do think they're going to go to it, is what they will certainly start that way. So we'll see what took so long for what. Did I miss the joke? Did I miss the joke?
I am so I am so in love with the idea of us. I want
you hadn't got me yet on the pause?
I hadn't got you derailed yet, which is always fun to do.
Good work.
But the other idea is, I love the idea of us like getting the writers union together and all at some point asking Paul Maurice, like could you imagine if the Winnipeg Jets went and won the Stanley Cup and he came out on the podium and the first question we asked him was what took so long, right?
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. That was a great burn that I totally flew right over my head. Sorry about that.
Well, Kenny birthed the what took so long question. Jeff Hamilton used it to great effect, and both times it seemed to, what's the term? Is chuffed the term? When guys kind of respond like that, both times it seemed to get.
If the question is if this is where I'm from, the answer is yes. But you need to be a little bit more specific when it comes to questions. The one-word questions are tough to decipher, but yes, I am from Altona.
Okay, I want to go through a little bit of the love, and you know what? I didn't allow you to finish that. I interrupted you, so you finished the thought. Sorry.
I do think the Jets will start that way, for sure, but I also could see, depending on how the shakedown goes, and we saw it at parts and at times, I think that a Dubois, Stastny, Kopp combination could also go up against Matthews at times as well. We'll have to see how it shakes down. I mean, I'm not Matthew Perreault generates a lot of things. Is Paul Maurice comfortable playing Matthew Perreault against Austin Matthews' speed game and Marner's, Marner and Hyman? I mean, we'll see. I think they would probably do it at times, but I also think you'll see more Dubois against Matthews as well. But we'll see what happens. I mean, that's the beauty. But again, I wouldn't commit to the last 5 games going that way because, of course, it depends on how it goes, and you don't have to lock into that if you're Paul Maurice. So I'm not going to commit because there's no need to commit.
Yeah. So
I don't agree with this either because Neil Pionk's shot is different than it was last year. And again, today Josh Morrissey was letting plenty of shots through. Is it a Dustin Byfuglien shot? No. Here's the thing, Dom. There are very few people that shoot it like Dustin Byfuglien in the entire NHL. So again, to me, this is a matter of the Jets were spoiled basically in seeing that for so long and having that they didn't realize how big a weapon it was until it was no longer there.
I'm going to leave it on this comment from John Vienak. The Jets spent so much time on the outside tonight, going to have to find a way to change that Friday. Yeah. I do agree with that. Before the game, we had asked to each give players from each team. You gave 7, I gave 1, and I nailed it. I aced it. I think I should be called aces, honestly. You get the nickname for hitting 2 hole-in-ones. But anyway, Jack Campbell, I'd picked him to be the difference maker, and I think he was tonight, but I also think that he made it look easy, and one of the reasons was because I don't think the Jets challenged him enough. I don't think they got to the inside. I think that's going to be a key to going forward in this series. All right, everyone, appreciate your time. Thank you for waiting for us. I know it took a little bit of time. We'll try and remedy that and get out here a little bit quicker next time because we appreciate you and appreciate the fact that you wait for us and appreciate the fact that you interact with us the way that you do. Want to keep everyone to keep in mind, if you want to go check us out, go to our YouTube page, Kenny and Renny. Go search it. Go subscribe. It's the best way to get all our stuff. We've got a really good show coming up on Friday. You want to promo Friday's show, Ken?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 3 excellent guests coming up. We're going to start with Emily Kaplan from ESPN.com, a great hockey writer that we both have come to know. She wrote an outstanding piece on some of the challenges of this COVID season that we'll dig into along with a number of other items. We've got our colleague from Sportsnet, Mark Spector, joining us probably around that 9:35 Central time slot. He covers the Edmonton Oilers primarily, but has a really good pulse around the NHL. We know the Oilers and Leafs have played a lot. We know that it looks like a 3-horse race right now, even though Eric Engels would argue, and rightfully so, that the Montreal Canadiens are still involved in the race for first as well. And then we're going to wrap the show up with Manitoba Moose head coach Pascal Vincent. I caught the first 2 periods of yesterday's game. Had a chance to really be impressed by Dylan Sandberg, especially Cole Perfetti with another power play goal. Christian Vesalainen solid as well. I also liked what I saw from David Gustafsson. So those will be our 3 guests, and I think it's just going to be another fantastic and fun show. So, but also again, I guess we'll see them Friday morning.
Yeah, well, and busy day Friday morning. That's the next time we'll be honest for that show. After that, we'll do a pregame Instagram as we always do. If you're not catching us there, come check us out. It's a lot of fun. It's like this, but it's on Instagram, and you get to see.
One quick thing. Sorry, Lynette, appreciate you tuning in. You know I'll be glued to the TV for opening day on Thursday. There is no doubt about that.
I thought you'd be golfing soon. Colin's going golfing this weekend. When are you starting off?
Patience. I'm not playing when there's when it's. I'll play when it's 2 degrees when it's in season, not to start the season.
There you go. Our camera guy Colin is getting out right away, beating aces here to the field. So again, Friday we start first thing in the morning with the show. We got Instagram before 45 minutes before the game after that, and as always, this post-game show that we're absolutely blessed that you tune in for. Really appreciate that. Thanks for sticking with us so late, although we know you'll go to 2 in the morning if we keep going. So we gotta tap out though. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We will talk at you and hopefully hear back from you on Friday.